Hey guys, welcome back to another video. This should be a pretty short video. This one is going to be about the aspects, so the different lines that you see in the chart. And the first thing I will say is that all charts, or at least the vast majority of them, are going to have both positive and negative aspects. And the positive, I almost want to put it in quotes, positive aspects are in blue, whereas the negative ones are in red. But sometimes it takes a chart with a lot of negative aspects to propel someone. It may be a more difficult journey, but ultimately it can propel them to do even greater things, because what does stress do? It lights a fire under us and it makes us act. So sometimes you can have a person that has such easy flowing aspects between all the planets in their chart that they never really do anything with it. It's just the energy is too easy for them. But other people will have tons of squares and oppositions and red lines in their chart, and it moves them to act, and ultimately it leads to great things. But again, it's usually a mixture for most people, and neither one of those, the positive or the negative aspects, is always going to be good or bad. It just depends on what phase of the journey the person is in their life, and whether they have actually taken those energies and made the best of them yet. So it unfolds over time. So let's start out by talking about the different aspects here. So first we can see this blue line that is connecting Jupiter to Mercury, for example. And there is actually another one. You can see how it's a double line here because it goes to the sun too. So Jupiter is making what's called a trine to Mercury and also to the sun. And a trine is 120 degrees, which makes sense. If you're looking at this, you notice it's a circle. So there's 360 degrees total. So if you're a third of the way over the circle here, you're 120 degrees out. And the degree Jupiter is at is 8 degrees of Libra. The sun is over here at 11 degrees Gemini, and Mercury is at 9 degrees Gemini. So both of those are very, very close. It's not exact. To be exact, they would all need to be at 8 degrees or 9 degrees, but there's an allowable orb. So as long as the aspect is within a few degrees, we say that it's making that aspect. So that is a trine. A trine is very positive, and it's a very harmonious, flowing aspect. So that is the first one that I wanted to cover. And you can see this chart actually has a few of them. So there's another trine here that goes to Neptune, and then yet another one going from Neptune over to Jupiter. So more on that later, but those are trines there. And then next we'll talk about the sextile. And the sextile is when planets are 60 degrees apart. So one example of a sextile here would be Pluto down here at 23 degrees Sagittarius is making a sextile to Neptune at 17 degrees Aquarius. And again, we have an orb here, 23 degrees and 17. So really, they're 6 degrees off. But we're saying that this is very close to having a 60-degree sextile aspect. Trines and sextiles are very positive aspects. Then moving on to the next one, we have what is called a conjunction. Now, a conjunction is almost like a wild card because it could be good or it could be bad. It depends, but it's always going to be felt, and it's always pretty extreme. So a conjunction is when two planets are together with each other, and usually within a few degrees, but depending on who you ask, some people allow up to like 8 degrees or 10 degrees, but generally if it's within a few degrees, it's definitely a conjunction. So one example in this chart is Mercury and the sun. So you have the sun at 11 degrees Gemini, and you have Mercury at 9 degrees Gemini. So we're within just a couple of degrees there. The planets are sitting essentially in the same place. So they're acting together, and that can make them stronger, but the effects of each planet will be felt on one another. So someone with the sun conjunct Mercury, again, the sun is like your conscious self, and Mercury is your communication style. So the way they communicate can have a big impact on how they project their conscious self. And likewise, the sun is illuminating Mercury, so it's kind of shining a light on their communication. So that is a conjunction there. And then moving on to the negative aspects, the red lines, the first one that we'll talk about is the opposition. And an opposition, instead of being conjunct, sitting with each other, it's 180 degrees apart, so sitting opposite. And one conjunction, or I'm sorry, not conjunction, one opposition in this chart is Venus at 27 degrees Gemini and Pluto at 23 degrees Sagittarius, within a few degrees there of being a 180-degree aspect. And an opposition, as it sounds intuitively, is when two planets are working opposite of one another. So it's kind of like a seesaw that's very difficult to balance because one planet's doing one thing and another planet is going in the complete opposite direction, having an opposite impact. So there's a lot of push and pull between the two planets until the energy is fully mastered. And then last but not least is the square aspect, which is even more challenging than an opposition. And a square is 90 degrees apart, and the two planets, they can't even really see each other like in an opposition where there's at least some clear visibility and understanding between the two planets. A square like this one between Pluto at 23 Sagittarius and Mars at 22 Pisces, that is definitely one of the most difficult aspects to have in a chart, because the two planets, they just can't understand each other, they can't relate. So watch out for those, and we'll talk about how to interpret those and how to improve the way that squares and oppositions are working. But those are going to be the parts of your chart that you're going to have to master mostly, whereas the trines and sextiles and some of the conjunctions are just going to be easy. It's going to feel like you're on easy street with those, and you really just want to pay attention to oppositions and squares and how everything is forming together in the bigger picture. But anyways, that was it for the aspects. There are smaller aspects, some other ones besides those, but they're minor, and we talked about the major ones. That's all you guys need to know for now. I'll see you in the next video.